Hey everybody, welcome to Atlanta News First, Behind the Investigation. I'm consumer investigative reporter Harry Samler, also known as Better Call Harry, but I am here with one of my favorite investigators, Andy Parati. Andy has a story today to talk about that when we say a story has legs, this story has a lot of legs. Andy, tell us about it.
Yeah, we're going to take you on the road for this investigation all the way to Birmingham, Alabama. And the reason why we're going to Alabama is because that state did something about 2 years ago that could be a lesson in policing for Georgia.
Alarming claims in the town of Brookside, allegations of illegal policing and racial profiling.
You want me to explain this to you?
Brookside's police chief resigned after allegations of improper and excessive traffic stops and policing.
They were literally being tossed out of their cars on the street, vehicles taken, had to walk to safety.
We're gonna deal with this, brother. We're gonna deal with this. What's your name?
I think
What's your name?
they were looking for easy targets.
Alexis Thomas takes us back to the day she and her mother, Shakitha, were arrested by officers in Brookside, Alabama in 2022. Both sent to jail, both their cars towed and impounded, costing them thousands of dollars. Pulled over because her mother's car had a broken tag light.
What's going through your mind?
Oh my God. I was terrified. What is really going on here?
According to a pending class action lawsuit, the city allegedly deployed its police department not to protect the public, but to generate revenue, boosting its budget 640% with fines and forfeitures in 2 years, purchasing this armored vehicle and naming its department's canine Cash.
Something's not right.
Wandalyn Givan is a member of the Alabama House of Representatives, whose district includes Brookside. After receiving thousands of complaints, she helped pass a new state law 2 years ago capping the amount of traffic citation revenue cities can collect to 10% of their budgets. Ticket revenue generated above that sent to a state-run crime victims compensation fund. The legislation received bipartisan support in a Republican-led legislature.
I had law enforcement agencies literally calling me from across the state of Alabama and throughout the nation to say, listen, we're good cops. We're not bad cops. Those are bad cops.
And Brookside was the catalyst for this legislation.
Absolutely. Brookside exists everywhere. There's a Brookside in every state.
300 miles away, ticketed drivers share similar outrage about a small police department in Lenox, Georgia, that generates even more revenue from traffic citations.
Like they were looking for charges to stack upon us.
It's crazy. I mean, they're pulling people over left and right.
It definitely seemed like he was coming after me. I was a cash cow.
An Atlanta News First investigation uncovered nearly 73% of Lenox's budget came from traffic fines in 2022. To put that in perspective, Brookside's fines and forfeitures made up around 49% of its budget before Alabama changed the law. While state law enforcement can revoke speed detection permits if it can prove cities are writing excessive speeding tickets for profit, Georgia does not cap the amount of revenue municipalities can collect from traffic citations.
To put it shortly, Georgia's state laws incentivize municipalities to use their police departments and their code enforcers to police for profit and for taxation by citation.
Jabasitu Ashvili is an attorney with the Institute for Justice. According to this report produced by the civil rights organization, Georgia ranks as the worst state in the country with laws that enable or encourage taxation through citation, largely because municipalities operate their own traffic courts.
So this is wholly counterproductive to the notion of police protecting and serving, and instead turns police into revenue collectors for themselves and for the town.
Atlanta News First uncovered Lenox is among 17 cities in the state that rely on 25% or more of their budgets from traffic citation revenue, the majority in South Georgia, including Warwick, Morven, and Poland.
The tax base for rural Georgia is declining.
Attorney Tommy Coleman represents some of those South Georgia cities.
Cities and counties in Georgia and other places ought to be able to master of their own destiny. They ought to be able to control their own revenue and.
When you look at
Yeah.
the numbers,
Right.
do you think that this impacts trust in law enforcement?
Well, I'm sure it does for the people who've gotten the ticket.
They are supposed to protect us, serve and protect us.
Back in Brookside, Alabama, a judge dropped all of the charges against Jakeitha and her daughter, but the damage was already done.
It made me really, really not like the police. I'm just gonna be honest.
I'm nervous all the time.
I was finna say, every time I go anywhere, I'm nervous. I don't want, if a police get behind me, I instantly have to record.
A department accused of taking advantage of its authority, impacting trust in law enforcement, something Alabama lawmakers addressed to prevent from happening again.
Court day stay at the bottom.
While its neighboring state has yet to take action.
So this is one of those stories that every reporter wants to do, and Andy did it right. I do want to ask you, did the folks in Alabama respond? Did authorities respond there?
You know, so we reached out to their attorneys asking for any comment about the allegations and the lawsuit that the Institute for Justice filed, but they did not respond.
I don't understand, and I think a lot of people watching who see this don't understand how this kind of thing happens. People know about it, and yet it continues to go on. I can go all the way back, and this probably tells you how old I am, to the 1980s, when I used to go visit my parents when they were living in South Florida. And there was one town as you approached the University of Florida that everyone knew that you didn't go through Waldo, like more than 1 mile per hour over the speed limit, because you were going to get stopped and you were going to get a ticket. And it just kind of went on for years. So ultimately, what's the resolution?
At first glance, when you see a story like this or you hear about it, you think, oh, this is just another typical, story about a speed trap. But in reality, it's much more than that. It's about policing agencies being used to create profit, revenue generators, and the consequences that it has on the trust in law enforcement. When you know that a city would literally, potentially may not exist without the revenue that its police department is putting in, you have less trust in law enforcement. Less trust in law enforcement. What does that do for generations of people who get stopped? And I think that's what I was hoping this story would show, is that of course, people should get pulled over for moving violations, for speeding, but you lose trust in law enforcement. You begin to question whether, am I really being pulled over because I did something wrong, or is there something else going on?
I mean, it's kind of amazing that it was a light bulb over the license plate?
Yeah, for the young woman and her mom in Brookside, Alabama, and it trickled into thousands of dollars and then behind bars. It's kind of unimaginable.
We talked about this again, about how these stories like this have legs. Where do you think this is going? Because you've heard from other people, and I don't know if we can talk about this, you've heard from law enforcement.
Yeah, I have. So after the story aired, I've had law enforcement officials reach out to me. We're going to have another story on that in the coming weeks. So that's a little bit of a teaser. I don't want to tell you too much about that story. But in that same story, I can say that I've had lawmakers reach out to me here in Georgia saying, hey, if that can happen in Alabama, it certainly can happen in Georgia. When we found even more cities collecting even more revenue than the town of Brookside from their police department. So lawmakers are paying attention to this, and I think that there might be an effort for some sort of legislative solution this coming session.
And I was going to say, what's the goal here on this one? And it seems like that would be it. If Georgia lawmakers actually pay attention and say, yeah, you know what, there's only so much you should be making, and after that, it's got to stop.
Yeah, I think there's some conversation of trying to emulate what Alabama did. Their cap is 10% for all traffic citations. Speaking to lawmakers here, I don't know if that's actually the magic number or if there is a magic number, but there's got to be something to be done to help people that have issues with towns like this, where towns are not supposed to exist because of their police department. They're supposed to generate other revenue. Obviously, that's not always the case.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up one other thing, because I took my daughter on a trip to Disney World, and as soon as I got outside the Atlanta perimeter heading south of Atlanta on 75, for those of you who don't know this, I love Waze. And one of the reasons I love Waze is because people actually do report, and you can actually see where some of those speed traps are. So as soon as I'm getting close and I see it, but you see so much out there, but there is a way to avoid it, and that's one way. So I wanted to bring that up as a consumer guy.
100%. And then in this story on AtlantaNewsFirst.com, we actually have an interactive map where you can find the towns, the cities in South Georgia and some in North Georgia where you know that you should really slow down because, and we actually share exactly how much money their revenue comes in from their police department.
All right, Andy, thank you so much. Unless you have anything else to add, I'm going to let you say goodbye because I don't do this very often. I do want to thank you for watching Behind the Investigation. I know we have a podcast, but I'm going to toss it over to the expert here to say goodbye.
Harry, you knocked it out of the park, and yes, you're right. You can watch more of my investigations and Harry's on AtlantaNewsFirst.com and anywhere where you get your podcasts.
Thanks, guys.